Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. My name is Jonathan Ledger and I am the TVET specialist in the Department for International Trades Education team based in London. Welcome to today's last session, actually. It's been a series of 5 this week, of Technical and Vocational Education and Training Showcase. We have 2 organisations and 3 speakers, so I'm especially impressed this morning. Joining us, and our first speaker will be, or speakers will be Anya Yerokhina and Phil Myers from Pearson, followed by Jane Rexworthy from People First International. So we're going to dive straight in. The session is recorded, by the way, and please use the chat function to post your questions for the speakers, because at the end of the session, after the 2 presentations, we will have a Q&A session. So here we go. Let's dive straight in, and it's straight away over to Anya Yerokhina from Pearson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning and this afternoon. And today, myself and my colleague Phil Myers will give you a brief overview of our work and efforts we've done in Thailand to date in trying to reform the technical and vocational education in Thailand. And next slide, please. So before we go into any project, and in particular any project in ASEAN, we always look at our overall mission, which is first of all, making everyone flourish through learning and make progress in their lives, which then translates into the overall world commitment made by the United Nations and how we as a world leading organization in education pride ourselves to this alignment commitment. First of all, Pearson is global standards, locally relevant commitment. And what you see in front of you is how we address the particular challenges which are defined by the United Nations, but certainly reflected in everything we do in skills and technical vocational knowledge and expertise we try and develop together with the countries we work with, by addressing the lack of access to education and growing inequality, which is more than relevant in Thailand, where there is still a huge disparity between the flourishing regions and very poor remote areas. What is the highest unemployment and how exactly we can address it by applying some innovative approaches to education and skills. But also looking, of course, at digital disruption, as well as making the economy of the future sustainable and try and minimize the pressure on the natural resources and how we save our planet by being innovative, efficient, and make everyone flourish. Next slide, please. So to the message of global standards locally relevant. Here it is. The global part was the commitment to sustainability, and the locally relevant is, of course, looking at what the country's needs are and where the country is at the moment and what exactly this country is trying to achieve. And what is exciting about Thailand, and Thailand 4.0 in particular, is that this economic strategy provides a very holistic way of embracing individuals, their well-being and prosperity, aligned with giving job opportunities in very cutting-edge economic industries, which Thailand is trying to develop and implement right now. So what we as Pearson looked at is trying to align ourselves first to what will it be like to become a successful individual in Thailand, and how we can make progress through giving them choice and opportunities. And it is combined by giving the range of social values, the range of behaviors which will allow you to become a decent and respected citizen, but also to acquire knowledge and skills in absolutely new approaches to perhaps even traditional economic industries which have been present in Thailand before. So we looked at the parts of agri-tech. What is the agriculture? But the agri-tech right now is kicking off in Thailand. And what does it mean? And how we apply it in any skills or innovations. What does creativity mean? And creativity of the future in the sense of a high value service economy and where to give jobs here. What is robotics and how robotics can be applied through various supply chains or various industries in Thailand. So this is our approach. Let's analyze and make sure that we know what is the economic strategy and then develop the TVET and skill solutions accordingly and together with the country. Over to you, Phil. And next slide, please.
So how did we approach this project? So we recognised the need, and that was from the Thai government and Thai institutions, the need to internationalise the TVET sector and to upskill employees. There was a particular focus in Thailand on an Eastern Economic Corridor project on the Gulf of Thailand. And this is an industrial zone in Thailand, which very much needed a new approach to education and training. So what did we do? We collaborated with the Department of International Trade to initiate dialogue with the Ministry of Education. We set up partnerships, so we communicated with the Thai Chamber of Commerce in Thailand and established communication with employers in Thailand so we could find out what their needs were and contextualize our approach. So we found out the needs of the employers and we worked to update and make our curriculum fit for purpose for those industries so that we could support those industries in the Eastern Economic Corridor in Thailand, so that those learners who would come out of the education programs would be able to go into employment and be able to be successful in employment. Results so far, we have 28 new BTEC centres, 10 more centres in the pipeline and 500 learners in 2020 and a forecast of growth. So it's a growing enterprise. Next slide, please. So we worked intensively with partner colleges, and this is an example of King Mongkot College, which is one of our large colleges in Thailand. We have a local Pearson team who worked very closely with our partner colleges. And we had a 6-month secondment for a UK team member who also went over to Thailand and worked very closely with the colleges. What sort of support do we put in place? So we supported the centre administration. So those people working in the colleges who were implementing the new BTEC system. We worked very closely with them and helped them to implement the new BTEC system of education. We trained the teachers. So many of the teachers were used to a more academic environment, and we trained them in vocational education. We also trained them in BTEC, and in the BTEC curriculum and in BTEC methods of assessment. And as well as that, we also looked at some of the subject information and the subject updates they would need. So we had a very sort of hands-on approach with our colleges, and we worked very closely with them. Next slide, please. Yes, so we had a process from 2018, working with colleagues, working with international stakeholders. We had an event, a Wilton Park event in Bangkok, where we initiated discussions. We signed an MOU with the Eastern Economic Corridor on the Gulf of Thailand. We were very fortunate and privileged to have a visit from the Thai Prime Minister to Pearson, UK. And we had ministry recognition of BTECs, and all of those stakeholder relations and all of those events helped us to initiate this project. Next slide, please. So we localized our curriculum, and this is really important because Thailand has particular needs. It has a particular industry set up. and it has particular roles in terms of priorities, in terms of where industry is going and what education needs to do in order to support learning. So we responded to that from our consultations of employers, and we changed some of our curriculum to make it right for Thailand. So we introduced the mechatronics pathway in our level 3 engineering. We localized the travel and tourism curriculum for Thailand. And we introduced employability and employability skills resources for Thai colleges. Next slide, please. And yes, and we recognise also the benefit of an international standard. So the EEC colleges and colleges in that locality, they're not able to support the need for learners in that area. So it's important that there is a national standard and an international standard, in fact. And so the value of BTEC as an international brand, learning from our experience in the UK, working with partners in Thailand, and really, that brand being internationally recognised is really important, and also important for employers many of whom have an international footprint. Next slide, please. So the key achievements. So 20 colleges, universities recruited, a localised model working very closely with local partners, a contextualisation of the curriculum in response to employer consultation, employer events to raise the profile of BTEC, working with British Chambers of Commerce, etc., and other partners, and a hub and spoke approach to growth, where we have core colleges, and those core colleges will work with further colleges. And I just wanted to end with a quote from a student called Tanaka Sarito from King Mongkot. And she said about BTEC that this sort of learning stays with you and supports you through your career and future education. And that's a really key and important endorsement. And obviously we're very grateful of our partnership, and we're hopeful of continuing to work and making this partnership work in the future and seeing it grow. So thank you very much. And here we are. So Anya has just spoken, and my name is Phil Myers.
Phil and Anya, thank you so much indeed. Really interesting story about the application of bespoke qualifications and training. So I'm really pleased that
Jonathan, I think you're muted.
I should have got the hang of that by now. Thank you so much indeed, Phil and Anya, for your presentation. Really interesting to hear the case study from Thailand on how you've been developing qualifications and training that meets the needs of local workers and local employers. Phil and Anya, I'd ask you to put your contact details, please, in the chat function so that our audience can pick up those contact details should they wish to connect with you directly. We're going to now move on to the presentation from Jane Rexworthy from People First International. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think you can see me and you've got the slides. If you can go to the next slide, please. So firstly, good afternoon and indeed morning for some of us. And thank you for inviting me to present on the following topic of building skills capacity in industry and TVET institutions with Train the Trainer programs. And I'm going to give you a case study that we've worked on in the Philippines today. But I first want to start with telling you a little bit about our organisation and how we fit into the network of skills providers in the UK. So I represent People First International. It's the international arm of WDT, a group of sector skills councils, and also an awarding organisation in the UK. And we're part of a much wider network of sector skills councils, and I think you might have heard from some of them this week as well, and also national skills academies. We are then represented internationally by the UK Skills Federation brand. And the UK Skills Federation brand, it's also part of the UK Skills Partnership, which helpfully brings together providers of TVET skills solutions and services. And Jonathan leads on that work. Next slide. So this just highlights the different sector skills councils and national skills academies that we have in the UK, many who have a presence internationally. Next slide. Next slide. So I think it's important to say that absolutely everything we do is based on employer skills needs. Most of us are charity or not-for-profit organisations, and our complete focus is providing industries with demand-led skills solutions, services and products. From skills passports to apprenticeship frameworks, curriculum and support in building capacity. Next slide. So we, in the UK, our model for industry engagement is very wide, starting with labour market intelligence. What I'd like to now do is share with you how has that changed over the last year and what have we been doing. So during the pandemic, we've worked in many countries to undertake a rapid skills assessment as we've seen skills needs grow and change in many industries and a greater need to redeploy people into new and growing job opportunities, requiring acknowledgement of transferable skills. We've developed roadmaps to support workforce planning and identified the need for new occupational standards in a changing workspace, much more reliance, of course, on digital capability. So the biggest change for all delivery providers and partners has been the need to change the way that we deliver to be a blended approach with a very heavy focus on virtual delivery. Indeed, the demand has been so high, we have developed ourselves a special train the trainer programme for our provider network to support them in adapting to this new way of working, which we don't see disappearing. Next slide. So I'm going to show a case study that we're really proud to have been part of, based in the Philippines. Thanks to DIT and in fact Jonathan, we were introduced back in late 2017 to DMCI, a family-owned large construction organisation which had identified some key challenges that were hampering their growth with the lack of supervisory and management training. They knew this was an issue in the whole of the Philippines within the construction industry and invited us to undertake a scoping trip to identify some of the skills needs with them. We were really happy to undertake this work and met also with other construction organisations and importantly TESDA, who are very keen to support the Philippines Build, Build, Build campaign. This was a true public-private partnership and we were really delighted to be on that journey with the Philippines Construction Association and TESDA on this. And it quickly, the work that we undertook quickly led to PCA, the Philippine Construction Association, taking control of this project. In fact, developing themselves an arm for training and development. So we were appointed to play a role in this, and we were appointed to develop and quality assure a fit-for-purpose management training programme. And it comprised of train the trainer, site supervisors and trade supervisors. It was also designed to meet global professional standards, and we worked closely with a UK awarding organisation, ILM, to do that. Next slide. So of course there's a methodology in terms of the journey we were on. So we started late 2017 and that journey still continues today, but it started with the project initiation, understanding what the needs were, working with the partners to map the competency standards that were required, supporting and developing an application to the awarding organisation to make sure that there was recognition for the programme, and then the development of key performance indicators for the construction employers. The curriculum was developed and then there was the delivery to master trainers of the training programme. And of course now it is an ongoing implementation with an aspiration to have trained 2,000 individuals within the next 18 months. Jonathan, next slide. So this is where we are to date. There's been 58 master trainers trained. We trained half of those initially. So you can see that already PCA has been able to develop more master trainers. There's now over 110 national trainers that are trained in delivering this programme. Already 364 supervisors have been through the programme. There's 104 on programme now. And there's another 1,400 due to go through the programme. COVID, of course, has had some impact. Some of those 125 have been delayed. But I think what's really important to say is that PCA have been able to turn that material into virtual delivery as well. So they've been growing and developing their skills for the delivery and their trainers' delivery over the past 12 months. And really excitingly, there's over 100 companies now engaged, construction companies, in this project. Next slide, Jonathan. So what's the impact? Well, when you see the case studies at the end, and I know these slides will come, you'll be able to read what some of the learners are saying, but it has made a difference to their managerial and supervisory skills, their ability to influence and support their colleagues that they work with. The trainers have improved their training techniques, and so therefore there's a greater impact on the learners and the satisfaction as they go through the programme. The employers are saying that they now have well-trained supervisors and therefore productivity is higher, which was a key KPI when we started this project. And the Philippine Construction Association goes from strength to strength in terms of supporting and helping its construction organisations with this training and other training. And for government, it's seen as a gold standard for TVET in the Philippines, increasing that productivity in this very key sector. So I'm only going to share one of these case studies with you today, but I think it's a really interesting one from a equality and a gender perspective. So what I was surprised at was just the sheer amount of women that are actually already working in the construction industry, and delighted to have women on the programme as well obviously as the men. And I'm just going to read this one out. So my favourite part was about leadership. From the start, where I found myself in construction, it wasn't easy being a leader, and I learned a great deal from the trainers. To this day, I'm still able to use what I've learned. The things I have overcome with the training have really helped me. It feels amazing now that so many things have changed in how I was perceived as a woman, and the difference in their attitudes of the people I've interacted with. So I think it's a really nice case study, and happy, as I say, to share these with you. And finally, what do PCA say? They say one of the learners called the training a great equaliser, as delegates from small business were benefiting from the training as well as from the larger construction companies. And so I think equality and gender support were a really big factor in this project as well, which continues. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for listening.
Jane, thanks so much indeed. And again, just a really good case study on how working with employers can really kind of build a program that employers want and respect. I'd ask my colleagues as well, Anya and Phil, to come back online, please, and on camera, so we can torment them. I have a few questions that have come in, and so if we could just go through the questions. We're going to be a little over time. We have run over time every day this week, so we'll take up 5 minutes or so of your time, and let's see where we go. So, what 3 tips would you have for shaping the development of qualifications? So I guess initially a question for Anya and Phil.
Well, I can start with one and probably let give Phil too, but I think start with understanding where exactly you are working. Never assume, is my tip number 1, that what you have will 100% fit for purpose. I think that would be my one. And Phil, do you want to give 2 more?
Yeah, it's sort of building on from that. I think secondly, think and understand how curriculum works where you're intending to run with it. I think in the UK, we understand a qualification as, a piece of work, a piece of curriculum. In other jurisdictions, they have a different understanding of curriculum. A curriculum might be a syllabus, it could be some occupational standards. there are all sorts of different ways of understanding curriculum in different countries. So really understand the curriculum in that country and that journey, which, you know, a college or a student or a teacher needs to take. My third thing is really value your teachers and the role that the teachers are going to fulfill. And it might be a journey for them. They might be moving from an academic into a vocational environment, and might be looking at how they deploy their skills in this new environment. And they're really going to drive everything. You know, they are front and center of working with those students and helping those students to progress. So, you know, really value them and work with them and support them.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Next question. How do you recommend we measure the impact from qualifications achievement to ensure that it further supports business and the social case for skills? Jane, would you like to start with that? So any recommendations on how to measure the impact from skills to make the business case for the, you know, to encourage more?
So I think it's really important. I think it's sort of taking a step back. The most important thing is to do a benchmark. It's what are you trying to change right up front? So one of the things when we look at return on investment, especially, is what are we measuring? If we're putting a qualification or a training program into a workplace, or we're giving it to students, what's it going to achieve? And so therefore it's that benchmark. Is it about people being able to grow in their roles? So are we looking at the expansion and the talent pipeline that we have in an organization, and will it change the role that somebody is doing now to another role that progresses them on the career ladder? So we look at those KPIs, and then it is about measuring. We had a very interesting example in Chile where we were able to demonstrate a 10% lift in business through the interventions of curriculum and qualifications. And so setting the benchmarks and working with organisations and the institutions to measure is really, really important.
Thanks, Jane. Question for both of you, I guess. How are training centres supported in the delivery of skills remotely to students and to workers?
Well, I can start. I mean, first of all, it's what works best in these remote jurisdictions. You know, I don't again assume that digital technology is the answer to everything. Equally though, what exactly is this digital technology? If everyone has got a mobile phone and that is the means which you can reach out to the most remote areas, then use the mobile and concentrate on this. But even we, you know, pride ourselves on saying that there is a power of textbook, but it's what's written there. And then again, to James' point, how you measure outcomes. So traditional tools combined with what the country or the region is willing to embrace, and never impose an infrastructure which will not work, because it's not going to create any impact.
Interesting, thank you. Jane, anything else? Any comments on that point?
Perhaps to come from a slightly different angle, one of the things that we've been looking at is how do you, in supporting remote learning, how do you create projects that add some elements of teamwork, collaboration? So we've been working with some higher education institutions, for example, in Latin America, actually, at the moment. And that's been around supporting them to develop projects with employers that the students can participate in remotely and together as a team. So learning some of the social skills. So it's being clever, I think, with the material that's there. And going back to Anya's point, really important to use. We do have textbooks. We have a lot of ways of accessing training and knowledge, and it's using all of those.
Okay, thank you. What should training centres and education establishments be doing to ensure strong employer engagement? Do you have any tips to help us?
I could start with that. I think it's really important to help colleges to broker local employer agreements and partnerships. I think it's, you know, vocational education is about supporting the learner in growing and eventually transitioning into employment. And I think for me, the best arrangements are those where colleges are able to work with local big industry, they get the benefit of their expertise, and sometimes also in terms of their equipment and technical facilities. But those relationships need to be brokered and supported, and sometimes that's a role which we can fulfill. We can support with that, working with chambers of commerce, working with DIT, and working with partners to help broker local agreements. I think that's really important.
Great, thank you. Any point there, Jane, that you'd like to add from a SST perspective?
Yes, so just finally, I think I absolutely agree with what Phil's just said, creating those MOUs, but most importantly, this is the time to do it, because what we know is every industry's changed through the pandemic, and actually they need a lot of support in skills in their own existing workforce. There's a real opportunity for TVET providers and HEI providers to go in and support the employers in achieving the new skills that they need in their business.
Okay, great. Now we do have 4 questions, so I want to zip through the 4 questions because I'm conscious we are over time. But as we got the 4 questions, I'd like to try and get them answered if we can. So, how do you ensure that the same high quality skills and education are delivered in remote situations?
I think responsive training, where as has been said, you are recognizing the on the ground situation, so that you're not expecting always to reach people through digital. You may have to use local teams and willingly use local teams to get to different areas. I also refer to the hub and spoke, so use colleges' expertise to reach out to new colleges. Those colleges who you've worked with first become those key participants and able to reach those further colleges and providers.
Thank you. And anything from People First on that point?
Yes, just very finally on that one. In the UK, with the apprenticeships, most of us have turned to virtual assessment for apprenticeships during this difficult time. That's created an equality of assessment in remote areas as well as in the more urban areas where it's easier to access. Okay,
thank you. What support do you give training centres to help them grow and develop their business to increased and improved capacity and capability? So how do you support centres who want to deliver qualifications and training?
Do you want, shall I go first? Or
yeah, whoever, yeah.
Okay,
Jane?
So from our perspective, it's understanding understanding what's needed at the beginning. So where is it about capability? Is it about capacity? Is it about knowledge of the industry? Once we've identified that, it's creating a kind of a roadmap plan to support that building of capacity, often with expertise from the UK, where we bring in experts from the industry, from like colleges, or to support that process of growth and learning. So it's the exchange of best practice.
Thank you, Jane. Anything from Pearson?
Yes, I think building on the existing role and understanding of teachers. So teachers will be established. They'll know what they're doing. They'll know the curriculum they're currently teaching, but they're making a shift and making a movement. So respecting and understanding what they do now, supporting them to move into new curriculum and new understanding.
Fantastic, thank you. Penultimate question: how do you integrate the teaching and learning process into employers so that it becomes second nature rather than an additional burden?
Well, I can start by saying that employers are part of teaching and learning, and then it doesn't become a burden. It becomes a partnership, and it's sharing it with employers, make them feel immediately on board, and it's what is done for them, with them, and measured by them as well. So the ecosystem of partnership always works best. Everyone should start together and then measure it together and tweak it and review it together as well. So the overall journey is the joined up approach.
Fantastic, thank you. Jane, anything to add?
Just to add, and I agree with Anya, I think it's listening to what the employers are saying they need and working with them on it so that you are embedding that learning journey, but in a way that works for them. So I think it's listening, always listening to the way that the employers want to work and how they work.
And final question that I have, is how can my organisation become approved as a partner to deliver your qualifications and training? And can you provide me with some support?
Absolutely. The contact details in the chat, and I think for both of our organisations, we'd be absolutely delighted to speak to you.
Agree, Phil. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Huge thanks to our speakers, Phil Myers from Pearson, Anya Yerokhina from Pearson, Jane Rexworthy from People First International. I'm Jonathan Ledger. You've been listening to the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Showcases. This is the last in the series, but we'll be back. We're going to arrange. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye now.